Okay, I see that Nick and Rich are getting seated, so I will start by saying good afternoon, everybody, and welcome once again to the Android Developers Office Hours EMEA edition. We are the EMEA-based Android developer relations team. I'm Sparky. I'm coming to you from Munich, Germany, and I'm also joined by my colleagues Nick and Rich, who are visiting where are you, in Tel Aviv? Is that where you are?
Yeah. Today we're coming slightly blurry from Tel Aviv. Please don't clean your webcams or screens or anything. We just have a slightly lower quality internet connection today. Hopefully the audio comes through okay. We're also joined, well, here's Nick. This blur here is Nick's blur, and this one's mine, Rich. And we're joined by a blur on the far left, or far right for you guys, of Yossi from Uvu, who has been joining us at the GDG meeting in Israel here.
All right, Yossi, wow. Imagine being in the same room together with him.
Yeah, this week he's live with us. He was going to join anyway, right? Just consume more bandwidth, so you may as well do it from the same room.
That's terrific. Well, I can see you guys pretty well as long as you hold stock still. So lean back on those support braces that you got yourselves built, and don't move a muscle, and your picture will be just fine.
Get comfy.
So, oh, and Matt is asking to be invited into the Hangout. How do I do that? You got
I'll
him?
take care of that.
All right.
Yeah, I got it.
So I see that we're already joined by several people live in the Hangout. We got Al, we got Art Sprung, we got Ravi. Who else has just joined us? Ravi, Zavi, and Richard. So that rounds out who's live in the Hangout right now. Do any of you have anything Android related that you would like to talk about this week?
Can I just check with you, Sparky? Where was Matt asking? Is he on the G Plus thread?
No, he just pinged me. Oh, he just joined the group chat. He must be in.
Yeah, he's joined. It's okay.
Hey, Matt, welcome.
There he is.
Some pretty posh digs you got there, Matt.
Oh, is this Matt?
Yeah. Is that where are you from?
Aaron, please feel free to go ahead and ask your question. You're going to ask it live or ask it in the chat?
I want you people to be bold and assertive, and ask your questions, because I've only got 5 questions queued up in the moderator. So if you fall back on the moderator, we're going to exhaust our prepared material quite quickly.
We have a plan. If we run out of prepared material, we can go around. We've got a hackathon running here at the moment in Israel. We can go around with our shoddy internet connection and see what people are up to at the Android Google Drive hackathon.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Right. So Ari has typed into the window. Maybe he has no microphone.
Right.
Has Al got a lower third? What is going on?
I thought I'd give it a try this week. I can turn it off if you guys want.
No, you go for it.
I want one of those.
I'll tell you how to get it in the chat, Sparky.
Yeah.
Are you using one of the Hangout plugins for that? Lower third. The lower third plugin?
Yeah, I am. It's I only just discovered it a couple of days ago.
Sweet. Nice. Everyone should start doing that. We'll know who you are more easily. He's asking, I want to play a sound when a user clicks on a button using a sound pool. It is working well except on my HTC. It works well except on your own device. It doesn't create a sound after the act. It is visible for more than 3 seconds.
I presume that's activity.
Gotcha. So it works unless the activity has been visible for more than 3 seconds, or the other way around. It doesn't.
That's like some kind of race.
Playback your audio hardware. Logcat audio hardware. PCM playback is going to standby. So it works if you hit the button within the first 3 seconds, and after that it doesn't work anymore. Are you pretty much using the example code for sound pool? I've only used it a couple of times myself, but I just grabbed the sample code, put it in, and used it, and it was fine. Have you checked Stack Overflow for this particular issue with your bit of logcat there? Sorry, I'm talking to a chat window live on air right now. I'm reading the chats back. Harry says, yes, I've checked Stack Overflow, and yes, he's talking about his activity. Which one of these people is Harry?
Yeah, I don't know anything about it.
Oh, he's got a Stack Overflow issue.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's great that we have a Stack Overflow case. I don't know if we're going to be able to really sort through it live.
Case?
Let's see. I'll take a look. It doesn't.
Go back when it's going to sleep.
Sample can go to sleep, so I don't know what.
It does seem to indicate that it's device specific in that Stack Overflow question, so maybe it's a problem with HTC's implementation or some of the binary packages they're using on some of their devices.
But sound pools are a pretty oft-used class. I would have thought if HTC had buggered up the implementation of sound pool, we'd know about it.
It does say that he's using Ogg Vorbis, so you know that's open source. You can't trust that stuff.
Maybe try to use the media player object and see if after prepare you'll still have the object ready for your.
Same result with the media player, Harry said. Well, we're on lower third now. We're now on the race to lower thirds across the whole of the screen. Well, I need one too. I don't think I can add one, being a live Hangout host.
Yeah, I'm drawing a blank on this one. I don't know. This is not exactly my forte.
Creating a notification with the sound worked, but that's clearly a hack. I'm just going to take off my. Sorry about my big hand.
It does sound pretty hacky. On the other hand, it sounds like a pretty clever hack.
Okay, we don't have an answer for you for that right now, Ari. I'm sorry. I haven't had issues like that with the sound pool myself, but again, I haven't tested it on that device. So I'll have a quick look around whilst we go to a moderator question quickly. Do you want to read out the first moderator question from your better internet connection?
Sure. The first question on moderator is, now that Google Cloud Messaging is in place, is there any recommended way of benchmarking how an app behaves for large numbers of receivers before going live? That's sort of an interesting question because it's only peripherally Android related, right? I think what if you're talking about load testing, really what you're looking for is you are testing out the web app, the server-based application, not the Android client. And yeah, it's a web service, so I would say test it out the way you would test out any web service. Probably abstract out the Android clients, and maybe just use some kind of a web-based load testing tool or an expect script or a Python script or something, and hammer at it purely with network-based requests. That's my answer to that one. As far as the Google Cloud Messaging part goes, you know, that's the Google Cloud Messaging is a service that we are providing more or less as is, and either it can handle your load or it can't, and we think it can. So GCM, at least as far as its load testing part, isn't really part of your system under test. It's really our system under test. So all that you need to worry about is your Android client and your server app, and the server app you can basically test using traditional network testing utilities.
It's also probably worth mentioning that with GCM, it's not worth assuming that if you send a message out, you're going to receive it quickly, because people can be out of service areas, can have their devices turned off. So bulk load testing like that's not really the best way to go. It's probably better to test the logic on the client side for discarding messages which have either expired or out of date or no longer relevant.
Right.
Effectively, you might receive a series of messages that have been batched up, waiting to be delivered to you until you kind of get back into it.
Yeah, and of course, Google Cloud Messaging is designed to not be a reliable protocol, meaning we make no guarantees at all that every message will be delivered or that messages will be delivered in a timely manner or in order. I like to tell people, think of it more like UDP rather than TCP. Packets can arrive in any order, some of them can be lost, and you should design the information that you're packing into the data to take into account the possibility that not everything will get through. For instance, rather than sending a GCM message that says, here is the content of your mail, you send a GCM message saying, since the last time you contacted the server, you have 27 new messages. Here's a little URL so that you can get your 27 new messages. If that one gets lost and number 28, 29, and 30 come in, you send another one that says, since the last time you contacted the server, you now have 30 new messages. And that way, your messages can be cumulative and you aren't reliant on every single one getting through.
The other thing to think about is if you are worried about, you send a GCM with fan out so it goes to thousands and thousands of people and you're worried about them hammering your server, you can build in some jitter code, either like don't deliver to everyone at once, but time phase it so you're pulling GCM different recipients at different times, or in your client code you can broadcast out to everyone and add some jitter in your client code, so maybe randomly over a minute you'll call and get it so your server's not getting hammered with 10,000 GET requests all at once. So that's something to consider.
And also, one of the new features of GCM over cloud-to-device messaging was you can now specify the time to live for the messages to make sure you put that, make it relevant to your application. So messages that would have expired don't actually end up getting delivered, and you'll reduce the load that way as well from people who turn on their handsets later on up in the morning. Okay. I think that covers that one. Does anyone else have a question from inside the Hangout?
All right, we got Ravi. Ravi, what's up?
Hi guys, how are you doing?
Good, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, I've been part of Google Hangouts the week before, and yeah, I'm really excited to join you guys back again. Not to waste any more time, but I just had a quick question. I don't know if this sounds a bit stupid, but pardon me if it does. I have an application which we are extending into a tablet edition, and now what's really hunting us is the screen resolutions, where as per the developer guide given in developer.android.com, the actual screen sizes were differentiated, or the generalized sizes were small, normal, large, and extra large. And as per the density, they say LDPI, MDPI, HDPI, and XHDPI. In this instance, I see some of the 7-inch tablet devices, or some of the devices which are having a 7-inch screen, taking HDPI assets, whereas some devices which are having a 4.7-inch screen, such as S3, is taking XHDPI assets. I'm not quite sure what strategy I just need to lay in order to fit the best layout with the best assets.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I'd expect those devices, the XHDPI assets, and the 7-inch tablet to take HDPI. Have you seen the supporting multiple screens page on developer.android.com? It gives a good outline of which device.
Oh, is Ravi still?
I have seen the developers Android site, and I've also seen the supporting multiple screens and stuff. But I mean, when I literally doing some development, and it's okay when we are doing it via an emulator and checking it over quite a few test devices. But when we send the app over the market, where I mean, Android devices are being in thousands of numbers, and we are unable to figure the way where we need to strategize the way So I mean, in some cases, we just need to specifically set some standards for a specific device and release the APK to the consumer and send it to him, which is taking hell loads of developer hours. So I
So
might think if you would help on this assessment.
what's the issue you're facing?
I get the impression from Ravi that one of the things that might be causing a bit of confusion is the difference between densities of assets and screen sizes. It's best to usually think of those as two different things. So the density of assets is about how much detail you want, and the screen size is your layout that you want to incorporate. So that way, when you come across something like an S3, it's using the high density assets, but it's still using the right layout for its size screen.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll sort of riff on what Al is saying. Basically, you have, say, a visual thing like a button background or an icon, and you say, I want this thing to be about, 2 centimeters across, and then you design a bitmap that measures about 2 centimeters across in each of, say, 3 or 4 bitmap or pixel densities. So you say this thing is at 300 dots per inch or 200 dots per inch or 160 dots per inch. This is how many pixels across the image needs to be in order to measure, say, 2 centimeters in real distances. And so you just have different versions of every visual asset and let the Android device know its own screen density and say, okay, I am an XHDPI device, I will pick this one, or I am an MDPI device, I'll pick that one. And you can then trust that when that thing is drawn on screen, it is approximately 2 centimeters across, subject to little minor variations because of the different size buckets. And then, so you size your assets for the density, and you size your layouts for the actual size. So you say, I want, this is the layout I want to use if the screen actually physically measures 7 inches across or 10 inches across or whatever, and then rely on the device to pick and choose the right combination of layout per its screen size and the individual asset elements based on its pixel density. Did that make sense?
Yeah, the ingredient that lets you do that is whenever you're doing your layouts, make sure you're working in dips, because that lets you not think about density, just think about size when you're doing your screen layout. So make sure you're working in density independent pixels for all your layouts.
Yeah, but when I'm doing the assets, the screen resolution which I use for the assets is like as specified in developer.android.com, which is a normal screen has 470 by 320, and large screens have 640 by 480. And using this aspect ratio, we are designing the assets where you cannot expect all MDPI devices would be having the same screen resolution. So I think this is where I'm making a mistake.
Yeah, I mean, the sizes you've quoted are the screen sizes, not the densities. So that would define your layout. The densities are, if you look on the same page, it'll say MDPI, and the range is about 150 to 200 dots per inch.
Right.
And that's what you use to determine your asset sizes and how much detail you want to put in those assets. The sizes you're talking about, the 640, 480, the 470, 320, that's for designing the actual whole layout of the screen rather than designing your assets and how much detail you want to appear in those assets.
Right, I got it now. Yeah.
Raw pixel dimensions as well. Like when you're talking about a normal screen, I guess the most common thing out there is a normal high density screen at the moment. And I wouldn't ever think about it in pixel dimensions. So I was always think about how big that is in dips. And when you're doing a design, use the dips value as the pixel dimensions there.
Fortunately, the screen support document does talk about DPs rather than actual pixels, so hopefully that's reinforcing Nick's message.
Yeah, there's a great training class as well, Android training, so that should hopefully give more background as well.
All right. That's brilliant, guys.
And of course, if you have further questions, feel free to look us up on Google Plus and send a little message to Google Plus or something like that, or take your question to Stack Overflow or to the Android Developers Forum, where people will be happy to help answer your questions for you there as well.
Thank you.
All right. Does anyone else want to ask us a question in the forum before we turn to the moderator again?
I've got one to throw across to Matt. I saw the announcement yesterday about Google TV rolling out to Germany, France, and the Netherlands. Do you know if that's going to be the same Android version as is currently available on the Sony player in the UK and the States?
So it'll be a different version. So the version that's being released in the UK, Germany, and Netherlands is going to be different from the one in the States. There's a couple of bits they've got over there that we haven't got quite yet over here. So yeah, it will be different, but only slightly.
Cool. Is there somewhere going to be put up that says what the differences will be, so that people coding for global Google TV can tweak their apps accordingly?
I will make sure that that happens, but ultimately it'll be things like the EPG content provider that's not going to be there and things like that again until we eventually bring it out. So yeah, but I'll make sure it ends up somewhere.
Cool, thanks.
No worries. So what are you working on? Can I ask?
I was looking at working on some social-backed applications with Google TV, so kind of chatting about TV shows, but using second screen on a phone and things like that. But if the EPG stuff isn't around, it makes it a little difficult to determine which program's on, and therefore get sort of hashtags and stuff relating to that program. But I can tweak it. There's other ways of approaching it. And it was a bit of a shock to see that there's no Google Plus app for Google TV yet.
Yeah, I know.
I suppose you could crowdsource that, couldn't you, Al? You could just sort of monitor which tags are out there, and when a whole bunch in one particular theme start appearing, you can guess that that show has begun.
Yeah, the only issue with that kind of comes when you've got people who are watching the less popular channels, because you get the popular TV program like X Factor or some talent show, and you get someone who's watching.
I think there's a number of ways you can kind of go with it. I think ZBox is the main one that they really target specific shows in their app. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what you come up with.
I'll put you on the beta list.
I look forward to it.
And when you patent the idea, remember that you heard it here first, so you can't sue us.
I'm sure in the States it's patented already somewhere.
So I wanted to ask Matt, since you were talking about Google TV a little bit, do you want to just give us like the quick, the quick 10,000-foot overview of what is in the new Google TV platform and how does it relate to Android? What version is it based on, and what new capabilities does it give us?
So at the moment, Google TV is running 3.2, so it's still Honeycomb, but essentially we've added a load of extra work for media codec, so it kind of means that we've given a load of extra hooks for people who are streaming media, so you can actually work out what the quality of the stream is. We're also adding in support for like play-ready DRM, as well as allowing content providers to create their own DRM solutions. We've also got libraries to help do second screen applications, so you can easily integrate with phones and tablets, and then you can either communicate over a socket or use intents, so essentially you just fire up intents on the TV or on the mobile client. And we're just developing a load of extra tools that essentially help developers in terms of UI. We're desperate to make sure that we're not just getting tablet UIs that are ported across without focus states being enabled, which obviously with a TV that relies on the D-pad is quite important. So yeah, and at the moment our main focus is just getting the international launch going in Paris, Germany, Netherlands, and the UK. I've just come from IFA in Berlin, where we've just had Samsung announce TV that's going to be launching in the UK and hopefully other countries soon. Hisense as well, should hopefully be going international, I hope. So yeah, there's lots of stuff going on at the moment. Lots and lots of devices coming out, so lots of interest all over the place.
That's fantastic. Now, a couple of minutes ago when you mentioned content providers choosing their own DRM solutions, I assume that you're talking about people who provide TV shows and stuff, not services that say front databases, right? Is that right? Different kind of content provider?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. Apologies. Yeah, definitely anyone who's kind of got video or audio content and they've kind of got their own DRM solution, which admittedly is kind of a niche area, but you'd be surprised at the number of people that have niche content that they're publishing. Like we've got a company that's in the US that distributes Korean TV shows, and we had them at Google I/O, and their main sort of demonstration show was Sex in the City, but with guys instead of women, and apparently like it's really, really popular over in the US. So, yeah, interesting.
All right.
You haven't got a starring role in that, then, yet, Matt?
No, yeah, I'm working on it. I'm emailing and pulling the right strings soon.
All right. Let's take another one from the moderator. It's been a little while. Let's see. Vimal says, "Can we make application which acts like an application locker? Other applications only get accessible after providing password. If yes, then you can provide a hint, etc." Well, maybe. I mean, one of the things to keep in mind is that our terms of use say that you can't provide an application that functions as an app store and distribute it through Google Play. So if it's going to be like an app store, you would have to distribute it some other way. We're perfectly okay with you writing those apps. You just can't distribute them through us. The other thing is, I suppose, yeah, sure, you could tie it into, for example, the license verification library. But were you going to say something, Matt?
I was interested in the question slightly differently. I heard it once it's on the device. So you could actually implement this as your own kind of launcher, I think. So it's the launcher which offers up the shortcuts to launch all the apps. So if you wanted to provide a customized experience which required a password to do that, I could see you writing it as a launcher.
But at the same time, you'd have to be very careful because we do have a clause in the developer distribution agreement which states you're not allowed to interfere with the other applications, the way they work, or the data that they use. So when you're trying to lock this application behind a password, just be quite careful that maybe it's still going to be possible to run the application in other manners. You certainly shouldn't muck about with the application data or anything to do with the way the application itself is stored. If any complaints come in saying that your application is affecting their application, then you could get taken down for it. So do it in a safe, family-friendly manner.
See, I think I read this question a third way, which was essentially detecting before the application is actually launched and then essentially throwing up a password screen before that and then preventing it from launching otherwise if the password wasn't entered.
Yeah, but that would be a function of the launcher, right?
I mean, I read it a fourth way, which is along the lines of using a password to get access to content provider data. So is there a way of requiring one application to provide a password before it can get access to data from a content provider from a second application?
Okay, well, Vimal, you've divided us 4 ways somehow.
No, I think what it means is there used to be a way to see the activity manager log file, to see the system logs and see the intents being broadcasted out, to see the activities being launched. And when the activity was being launched, you used to send an intent and show your lock screen. And when it was introduced, the log cat is now blocked, so no one can read the system log even if they have a permission. So application locker won't work on that same issue.
I see.
Okay.
Basically, you just look for the package name after you set the lock feature. Then you search the package name on the lockat, and then when the intent is broadcasted, then you show your own screen instead of the app screen. Basically,
So on top of it.
yeah, on
And
top
then
of
if
it.
they don't get the password right, you kill the application? Or?
Yeah, you don't kill the application. You just send the cancel intent or send the home intent. So the app won't get actually being on the yeah.
So you can't do that anymore since Jelly Bean. So I guess if you were going to go the launcher route, I would look at the source for Launcher 2, which is in AOSP, and use that as a starting point. Beyond that, I guess we need some more details on what you're exactly trying to achieve.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough.
Next.
Next.
Anybody else? Yes.
I've got one for Nick and Rich. Can we see what's going on in the hackathon?
Yeah, I'll try and get a mobile device through there in a minute.
Cool.
The Nick's laptop. I'll see if I can join from him. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We're already fully booked. We've got all 10 users in the stream right now. So I might have to take this device with me and hope it doesn't. No, there's already 10 people in the Hangout.
Oh, okay.
So if you leave the Hangout, you'll be able to see.
I'm quite happy to. If you tell me that you need the space, I'm quite happy to drop out.
No, it's fine. We'll leave it to the last 5 or 10 minutes of the Hangout because there's a good chance we'll drop out whilst walking around the building, and then I'll take this laptop and go into the hackathon space, and you'll be able to see it there.
Cool. Thanks.
In 15 minutes, we'll jump over there and see what's going on.
You can see a few pictures on my Google Plus page.
If you follow Yossi on Google Plus, from Ubu. Okay, so we'll just go to the next question. Have you got one lined up there, Sparky?
I do. Let's see. How to manage the ICS incremental use of memory for high-density graphics. My apps are using up to 20 megs pre-ICS, but with ICS it goes up to 60 megs plus. That's too much. Heavy apps crashes due to lack of memory, etc. Is there not a something that you could put into your manifest that says I want to use an extra big system heap that you probably shouldn't use, but otherwise
optimized. It sounds like you might be storing raw TIFF files or something in your XHDPI folder. What's 60 megabytes of graphics?
So I'm confused as well on this question to see how many ways it divides us. So is he saying something's changed in ICS with the memory handling, or is he just saying like the ICS era with HD graphics with higher resolution? Like, how do you guys interpret it?
I interpret it as the latter one, but now we're going for HD graphics.
No.
So into the use of memory space.
Yeah, so each of these devices, like with the high resolution screens, will generally have a higher per app memory level, which you can get kind of by the memory info class. Is that all right? I can't remember the name of the class offhand. There's a class which you can query and say what's my limit. And a good way to do this kind of thing is to use image caches so that there's a first level where you're caching it to in-memory cache, and then if that cache gets full, you're putting it out to disk and so on. And there's a bunch of great implementations of that, most of them based on LRU caches. So there's a good talk at Google I/O by Jeff Sharkey about writing efficient apps which go through such a cache implementation, and that talks about how you would size it based on the amount of memory available on the device. So that's one strategy for having like a clever caching system. Any other advice, you guys?
Al Sutton's just put a link to memory activity manager. Get memory class.
Get memory class. That's it.
That was it.
Yeah, that's one where they give you all the details about what you got available.
Yeah, and I think Jeff's talk says about using the amount of memory available to apps to size your cache. So you might want to keep, say, half of your memory heap available for images. But it depends what you're actually doing, obviously.
There's also the recycling bitmap information, which might be useful if there are a lot of bitmaps being held around in memory.
Yes, we have a good blog post on that at Android Developers blog.
Yeah, reuse bitmap objects and recycle it as soon as you can. I think Chris Baines also has a great recycling bitmap cache implementation on GitHub. If anyone with a keyboard and better internet can find a link to Chris Baines' GitHub, that'll be most appreciative. That's a nice solution.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I've got to say, there's 60 megabytes. sounds a lot.
Yeah, my official worry with that is as well that you're just opening like large size bitmaps and holding the full size bitmap in memory and then resizing it when you're setting it. So I definitely don't do that. Definitely only open, you know, do the thing where you get the bitmaps bound and only open it at a certain size at which you want to present it. So never kind of keep it full thing and resize it, especially if you're doing your own custom drawing where you're actually resizing it in your own draw or anything like that. Be very careful about doing that.
Another thing to consider, I think it was in the Green Droid bitmap recycling, they set a listener for memory warnings, and then the minute they receive that, they kind of clear out their bitmap cache. And I don't know whether that's good as an absolute last resort, or whether you just should be avoiding that situation at all costs and not trying to account for it. I don't know, but.
And there's the new callbacks introduced in ICS, right? There's the on-trim memory, which you'll get before on-low memory. So this is all covered in that talk from Jeff Sharkey at I/O, so I strongly encourage you to check that out. Yeah, which talks about that's the point at which you trim out your cache.
Yeah, sounds good. And then, yeah, the app should never get to the point that it crashes anyway.
I could get behind that.
What was that, Sparky?
So, I could definitely get behind that last comment of yours. The app shouldn't get to the point where it crashes. I like that. I think I can live with that advice.
Thanks, Sal, for that link.
The link, it's a YouTube link for the Jeff Sharkey's I/O talk. You can also find that. Yeah,
you also posted on the thread.
Yeah,
the memory GitHub.
Cool. Any more live questions? No. Silence.
We've got loads more appearing in the moderator, though.
Oh.
Someone's asked how they can update offline documentation for Android 4.1 so he can share it with other developers. He's downloaded it 3 times, but each time the Android training is still that of Android 4.0. I think this is more likely because
Probably hasn't changed.
Haven't had many new classes added to Android training for 4.1, but maybe you've spotted a class that is online that isn't offline. But it is most likely that we just haven't added any new classes since the package was built.
My understanding is that each time we push an SDK release, the docs team rolls up the documentation site and they put that in the SDK as well. I think that's what they told me.
There's also part of the Android open source project. There's some training documentation. All the development samples are in there as well. So if it does look like there's a problem, there's the ability to contribute back to the AOSP and make tweaks in that hopefully get rolled into the next release.
Cool.
So if the SDK is updated, you'll get the latest patch then.
So in light of that, I would guess that if he's not seeing any new classes, it may just be that there aren't any, unless unless he can identify something that's missing. I would go with that.
Yeah.
Boy, Rich, you're right. The questions are flowing in here. Rob M wants to know, I'm looking for tips on developing a lock screen widget. There isn't a lot of documentation on that. However, I did find some information about it on Stack Overflow. I just found it by searching for it, so you probably can too. Or if you look back in the archives of these Hangouts, go back maybe 2 or 3 months. I think you may find it there. So we had a.
The general answer is creating a widget. Then I think most of the app hosts which tend to work with standard widget API, so it should be exactly the same as creating a home screen widget, right?
Yeah, now that you mentioned it, I think the question was that we have some information about lock screen widgets that are sort of officially supported for Honeycomb and beyond, and one of the objections that people have is they say, I want my lock screen to work on Gingerbread and before as well, and that's where you have to get into the unofficial stuff and look at at what the people have done on Stack Overflow. So one of the authors of one of the leading lock screen packages basically posted to Stack Overflow and said, "This is how I did it."
Why not try and use the AOST code and try to see how it's built on the version you want to implement? Just extend it to what you want to change, maybe the views, and basically have the base class already implemented on your application.
Seems like a pretty good idea. Should we move on to the next one?
Mm-hmm.
Let's see.
Oh, Ravi was trying to ask a question when I was talking about, started asking the next thing from the moderator. Do you want to ask your question, Ravi?
Yeah, I've been posting it on chat actually. That's fine, I can ask you. I mean, I heard it from Google I/O that Android would be strictly monitoring the applications that were paid on Google Play, and someone would be downloading and installing the APKs. Will be having some strict reinforcements and considering a downloaded application. So what has happened with it? I mean, I haven't seen any restrictions of people downloading the applications from third-party sites and just installing them on their phones.
I think that's related to the encryption that was coming in Jelly Bean for paid APKs.
Well, the encryption is in, I think.
There were some issues that it was backed out for a bit, but I think it is back again.
Oh, right. So the devices which are sporting 4.1 and less than 4.1 will not be having any kind of restrictions over these stuff, if I'm true.
I don't think there's much that we can do for devices that are running a release of the OS that comes before it knows about the encryption, because how would it? I mean, I guess I don't know. I suppose if we updated the Market client or the Google Play client, maybe you could.
There's changes to package manager involved as well.
Okay.
So you can't rep.
Yeah, it's definitely Jelly Bean only.
Yeah, that's the problem with all those darn legacy devices. Screw up all your wonderful new technology.
I'll be interested to hear. So, what is it you actually heard at Google I/O? Was it about the app encryption? Is that what you're asking about? Or you sound like you're talking about the uninstall from unsecure sources tick box things and off.
No, when I just watched the launch of Nexus 7, which is about the Jelly Bean. Yeah, that's where it is.
Next. Okay. Houdini has a couple of questions following up from previous discussions. He was talking about the one-by-one settings widget, saying, isn't that really a shortcut because it can be placed in a folder, which I thought was exclusive to shortcuts. Back to the original question, how do you create a config activity for a shortcut? And then he asks a related question, which is, he says, my main use case for creating shortcuts is replicating place on home screen that is found in the overflow menu for the People app. How can he do that with that widget so he can skip shortcuts altogether? So
there's actually a Stack Overflow answer for creating shortcuts.
Yeah, the key is to get the create shortcuts permission, isn't it?
Yeah.
So just search for the create shortcuts permission. Yeah.
Install shortcuts.
To have a widget which creates shortcuts, I think. Again.
You want to basically have a button which adds the widget on the home screen.
Is there a way to do the same with widgets so I can skip shortcuts? No. There's no way inside your application of having a button that you press which adds the widget to the home page.
That's right. The user has to install the widget, right? Is that right?
Yeah. I think Are we actually agreed on that one? That's the question he's asking.
It only
He
took 3
wants
weeks,
to-
but we got there.
Yeah, he's been trying to ask this question since Google I/O, I think. Trying to find a button to add widgets to the home screen.
So there is an API for adding a shortcut, but
Yeah.
not.
For adding widgets. Interesting though. Wow. Okay, we had a little bit of inference.
I'm thinking it needs to implement this app as only a widget. So just say the app won't do anything unless you install a widget. And then he'll have his widgets.
Or just a lot of uninstalled apps with low ratings. But yeah, I think we got to the bottom of it in the end, and no, it's not possible. Next.
Joined by a couple of new people live in the Hangout. We got Prakash, we got Quint. Do you guys have anything you want to talk about here in the Hangout? Okay, we'll let them think about that. Maybe take another question from the moderator. So Sachin says, I want to make a custom calendar view wherein I can show events, match fixtures in date cells. How should I go about it? Thanks.
Probably start from the calendar view widget in AOSP.
So are you thinking like take that and subclass it, and can you just override layouts maybe? How much customization do you think is necessary to do something with that?
Depends what you're trying to do. You might even be better off going from the calendar app itself. Depends what you're trying to achieve. I'm not quite clear on exactly what he's trying to achieve.
I was trying to show calendar.
And what about the Google I/O app as well? That might be a good one if that's sort of what you wanted to sort of implement.
Okay, so a couple of good sources. Look at the AOSP calendar app or the Google I/O app.
Yeah, I'd probably start with maybe calendar, which does something similar rather than calendar view. The actual calendar, if you go to like the month view, which sounds like what you want, which draws a month and has little blobs marking events. So I'd see what I could learn, borrow, steal from that, and go from there.
We had a question not too long ago, a month or two, where somebody basically wanted to take their own private calendar data and kind of mash it up with Android calendar data and display it in a calendar. And I seem to recall that what we came up with at the time was more or less they would have to create their own UI for it, that we didn't have a way to just enhance the existing UI of the existing app. So it is that the way to do this is going to be to look at the source code of one of these already published date viewing apps, I/O, calendar, whatever, and actually really get down in there into the UI and basically copy/reinvent the UI. Okay. Can I make an Android app for just 3 people to have without putting it in the store? Yes, absolutely. We call that side loading, which basically is installing by a means other than Google Play. And in order to support side loading, your users have to go into settings, and from settings go into security and select the checkbox that says unknown sources. In this case, unknown sources is pretty much anything but the Google Play Store. Once they do that, the easiest way to give just 3 people your APK is to attach it to an email and email it to them. When they read the email on their device, then the package manager will offer to install it. Clear, I think?
And as you get increasingly sophisticated, there's other things you can do. So if it's just small, like something like Google Drive or Dropbox is great for always sharing the latest build. But as if you get more requirements to kind of have more testers, more people you want to distribute this app to, there's other solutions out there. Like there's one called Hockey App, which is I've heard quite a lot of people using. So you can use that to distribute your app to other people. It's kind of like a private store.
When you said that, what I immediately thought of was Hawker, which I seem to recall was popular a couple of years ago as a way of sharing things with people. Are those guys still around?
I don't know. I've not heard from them in a while.
That was something that it was a little bit like Bump, only it worked over a distance where you had your accelerometer and you took your device and you kind of went like that, almost like you're throwing a frisbee, and then they could catch it, and the devices would talk to the server and they would correlate the accelerometer readings and figure out who threw what to whom. Doesn't ring a bell with anyone? HOCCER.
It doesn't with me, but a quick thought is if you're developing an Android app, you can use NFC Beam to send a URL between devices. So if you wanted a quick way to do it, host the APK on a web server and update the app so that NFC Beam sends a URL across, and the other device should be able to open it up and install it.
I thought about that. I also thought that a small developer who's going to get an APK to a couple of friends quickly is more likely to have email than a web server.
True, true.
Yeah, email or Drive is a good way to go here.
Yeah,
Google Drive, good one. I hadn't that one even slipped my mind. That's a great answer too.
Yeah, I like Google Drive because then you can update it and make sure everyone has the latest version and all this good stuff.
Okay. Let's see. All these questions that keep on splitting our opinion multiple different ways.
There's never one right answer, just a whole series of suggestions, which is the way it should be.
Right. Let's see. Oh, you people have to stop voting on these questions. New questions are coming in and they're getting voted up and filtering to the top of my list. I'm a moderator. Maybe in the future I'll lock the moderator just before we start the hangout. So a word to the wary: get your questions in before the hangout begins if you want an informed answer. I just switched from C2DM to GCM, but sometimes my messages don't get delivered to all devices when sending them as a batch. The devices are all linked to the same Google account. Does that mean it'll only deliver them to one?
No, and my reading
I don't think
is that GCM doesn't guarantee delivery of any message, so...
I am not aware that it restricts multiple devices on the same account from each receiving the message. I hadn't heard anything about that, so I would guess that's probably not the case. It may just be vagaries of delivery.
Lots of applications that you'll have installed, you'll get notifications across all your devices at the same time. GCM, as long as you've got the ID right, as the device sends it up and registers with your server, you may have issues that you're not correctly supporting both C2DM and GCM at the same time. If some devices are still on the C2DM version of your client and some devices have upgraded to the GCM version of your client, maybe one or the other aren't getting the messages because... Yeah, well, you've got to support both C2DM and GCM and both endpoints on our server so we can send the right message to the right clients. So you'll be sending two sets of messages if you're still doing the upgrade. Especially if you've just switched over, it's likely to fall into that bucket. So make sure you've got an old client that's still on C2DM and a new client that's on GCM when you're doing your tests, I would say. If it's not that, then yeah, what Al said, that we don't guarantee delivery, but it's definitely not down to us excluding devices because they're on the same Google account. And Andrew Kelly has one other question. He also asks, if I have a grid view, how can I get the last row to be centered if I had an odd number of items to the grid? Currently it's in the left-hand column of the other items. I don't actually have an answer. I don't expect it to be in the left-hand column unless you can add a footer to grid views like you can on list views. Maybe you could have a footer item if you've got an odd number of items and put it in the footer. Any suggestions from the Hangout?
Add a spacer item?
Yeah, maybe use a view with a gun attribute, just as a filler.
So it would be in the right-hand column then?
Yeah.
Or you want it centered in the middle?
But I'm saying if it's like 3 columns, and maybe you could add 1.
Oh, it's 3 columns?
spacer.
Yeah, that's not bad. Yeah. I was imagining 2 and then left and right and stuck.
No, right, yeah.
No, he wants the center, so basically it has...
I would probably say that this sounds like a custom layout. You probably want to extend grid view and change some of its layout metric to center the last line.
I haven't done this with grid view, but I I had a question a little while back where somebody wanted to center an even number of, well, sort of a mix of even and odd numbers of elements, in this case buttons, in a relative layout. And what I suggested was creating an invisible, or a non-visible text view, center that, and then place all the other elements relative to that. So a spacer item or an invisible view of some kind may be a way to go here.
I like the idea of extending grid view, like an sensitive grid view or something like that. I think that feels like a proper way to do it. Yeah, plus it'll work nicely with the adapter as well, rather than trying to adapt around and putting things in flippers and stuff like that. There we go. Announced.
I was thinking, yeah, just do that. It's fine. And that was the last question from the moderator, unless someone else has snuck one in.
I've got a bunch more, actually.
Oh, well, we've only got 3 minutes left of the hangout, and I was going to do a quick run round to the
yeah, do it. Do your channel.
hackerspace.
Turn down.
All right. Well, why don't I talk through some of these questions while you take a walk, maybe?
Okay, I'm unplugging from the Ethernet, so that might drop me off for a start, but I'll just read.
Ooh, he is frozen. So we've got a message from the moderator. It says, we described how to make use of a drawer, but didn't document it or provide any implementation advice. Well, that's true. It's so new that that basically the Android team had not, or the framework team had not yet caught up with the practice. So look in Stack Overflow. There's some Stack Overflow threads that give links to projects that implement various versions of the left-hand drawer. So, and look. But then obviously. Look to the YouTube application as the way that we recommend that it be implemented in terms of behavior. So. Oh, I see some motion there from. Is that Rich?
Yeah, I'm sure you can see that actually it's a super beautiful day here in Tel Aviv. I just thought I'd stop on the balcony for a second to make you all kind of jealous. When was the last time you saw a sky like that in London?
It's been a while since I saw
even palm trees, damn it. Okay.
Let's see. I'll take another question from the moderator while he's walking. In my UI thread, I start a task to do some long time calculations. How can I wait properly in the UI thread to get info about finishing the task without handlers? You can post progress updates from your async task, and you can also complete the task by doing something in onPost execute. And
we have a cardboard Android.
We have a cardboard Android. Rich, what are we looking at? Is that?
I have a feeling they've just frozen.
Uh-oh. Well, they kind of stepped into a lion's den of developers there. They're probably using every Wi-Fi channel. Let's see. Got a couple of new people on the call. We got Falco Richter. Any news from Falco? Okay. Review. Do we recommend creating a library Android project to validate is always a good idea. Maybe not for something like a spinner or a drop-down list, but if you're taking anything from a text view or a text edit, definitely validate your input.
And they're back in Israel.
Okay, we are back.
Ooh.
All right. And here's the hackathon happening in the college right now with the projector up there. Cool. Yeah. This is we're on YouTube live streaming. It's the Android Developer Office Hours.
How are you guys? Say hi from Tel Aviv.
What projects are you working on?
I'm working on. Hi. I'm working on. It's a kind of application that integrates Google Drive API to distribute files related to an event. If you're attending a Google I/O, then you don't have to download all the presentations. It will drop to your inside your Google Drive automatically. It's very cool.
Thanks very much.
Thanks.
Does anyone want to see what other projects are going on, or do you want to finish it off there?
No, I'll keep going around the room. It seems interesting.
Okay. Yeah. Would anyone else like to tell the world what project they're working on at the moment? Yeah. Yeah. What project are you working on? Back here.
Killing Papua.
Yeah.
We're doing dog feeding.
Dog feeding?
Yeah, for poor dogs. No, it's it's basically a simple application that once installed on your Android device, you can choose whatever products you want to subscribe to, and every time the build machine builds a new version, it uploads everything to your drive, and then automatically installs on your other devices, beta users, QA, product owners, whatever.
Excellent. As you may have guessed, this is actually a Google Drive / Android hackathon, so lots of the projects going on are Google Drive projects as well. For this excellent little addition to your build system, we'll upload your files as you're building them straight to Google Drive and let all your users test them. The latest version of your apps as they're being built. We'll leave it at that because we're way over time already. But
Thanks for the talk, Rich.
Only a few people? Yeah, it's all right, good. But thank you all very much. We're going to leave it there, and we'll catch you again next Wednesday.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Thanks, everyone, for showing up. Once again, giving us another great excuse to fill your heads with lots of ideas about Android development. And we'll join you again at the same old 2 o'clock UK time, 3 o'clock Central European time next Wednesday. Take care, everyone.
Catch you all next week. See ya.
Bye.